And speaking of DFLers that don't have new ideas, let me segue into Mr. Tom Dooher, unfortunately, who is a product of the Robbinsdale area school districts. And like I've said before, he's on their great grads page, and I'm not. I mean, you talk about an injustice. But Mr. Dooher, I have a new thing I'm going to call Mr. Dooher. He is a part-time union boss and a full-time comedian. He ought to go on Comedy Central. They ought to hire him. He's better than, who do they got? Who's that one guy? Colbert. And who's the other guy? Stewart. Got to be better than them. Those guys are terrible. Dooher, during this interview, he sat down on Channel 5 at issue with a Tom Hauser, which is, of course, their, the state, basically the states meet the press. And 3 or 4 sound bites here from Mr. Dooher. I don't know if we'll get to them all, but Tom Hauser, I shouldn't laugh, because this is serious business here. Reforming education. Republicans are all over the place with ideas on changing education, removing mandates, doing other kinds of things, alternative teachers. I'll get into that in a second. And the Democrats, of course, are scrambling to protect their DFL stronghold. And Mr. Dooher is trying to put a good face on it, but I mean, first question from Tom Hauser. There was a bill from Senator Dave Thompson of the Lakeville area. Now, I'm going to get into detail on this next week, but let me just explain it. Basically, it's a teacher or employee pay freeze for 2 years, coupled with the removal of the January 15th deadline to reach a contract negotiation, along with the removal of staff development mandates and stuff. I'll get into the details of it next week, but it's pretty comprehensive. And it's aimed right at the heart. Now, there's some parts about it I don't like, but I think it is aimed really at trying to do something to control the costs in the education area. Well, Hauser asked Tom Dooher what he thinks about that bill, and here is Mr. Dooher's response.
Well, I talked to Senator Thompson about that, and I said, you know, we've taken historic sacrifices already, and teachers, on average, we're taking a $17 increase in their pay from last year. So it doesn't go at the problem, and our strength of our schools is communities making that decision, not politicians from St. Paul. So we'd really like him to look at the research and see what this is really fixing. We don't think it's fixing the problem.
You're darn right it's not the right way to go. I'll tell you what we could add. How about getting rid of steps and lanes? How about getting rid of tenure? Hey, Mr. Dooher, this could be a lot worse. I can come up with a lot about vouchers. I mean, you think this bill is going to... You think Republicans are going to stop with this bill? Not, I hope not. Not a chance. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So it's not the way to go. Well, what it doesn't go to the heart of the problem. Well, what's the heart of the problem? The heart of the problem is we've promised all you public school workers these cushy pensions. You get your tenure, you get your guaranteed salaries, you get your summers off, and all you do is whine and complain that you don't. And you take what historic sacrifices? What is public unemployment versus private? I mean, they have gotten pay increases. I mean, the steps and lanes, which of course they consider that an entitlement. The idea you've taken a historic sacrifice, that's a joke. Like I said, comedian, Mr. Dooher. All right, now this next thing is the liberal obsession of the millennium here. The so-called achievement gap, which is this gap in, and it does exist. Now, I feel it exists for different reasons than a lot of people do, but there is this gap, and I'll just explain it quick. The gap between what white students achieve and what minority students achieve. And that does, like I said, that does exist. Now, liberals think throwing money at it is the way to solve it. Of course, we've been doing that for how long now, and it hasn't done squat. But I want you to listen to the great new ideas. I mean, these are hard-hitting new ideas that Tom Dooher has to solve the achievement gap. Just listen to this brilliance coming out of this man. Roll the tape.
Right. What we want to do is take an assessment first. And the federal government has identified 32 schools where students struggle academically the most. So we want to reduce class size there. We want to put in wraparound services where parents can get health and screening, and so kids are ready to learn. And we want to invest in early childhood. And before we do that, we want to make a statewide assessment. So we have strong programs so kids are ready to learn when they get into kindergarten. Keep the class sizes small so they get the individual attention and really focus on getting that achievement gap eliminated.
So we're going to, in other words, with Mr. Dooher, of course, that was a lot of good sounding rhetoric right there. I mean, I can understand how people get sucked into all that wonderful rah, rah, rah. It all sounds good, but basically, we're going to reduce class size and have more money for early childhood ed. Now, is that something that we have not done for the last how long? It's the liberal answer to everything. More money, lower class size. The only thing you ever hear from these people. What do you mean more money? There's no evidence more money creates better schools. There's no evidence. I mean, I don't buy the class size argument. I mean, you know, again, what he's calling for here, and he's not saying it, what he's calling for is more union members. I mean, what do you want if you want lower class size? Of course, you can stop diagnosing 5-year-olds with diseases and disorders and putting them in special ed with a special ed assistant and a special caseworker and a special counselor. Yeah, you could do those things, but of course, they got unions too, right, Mr. Dooher? So what he's calling for is just more union members. That's just never ending. That's their only agenda. And look, whenever schools become about employing people, okay, it's inevitable that they lose sight of why they're really there. They're not there as a jobs program. They're not there to give people work. Work is necessary. People are necessary, but employing as many people as you can is not their job. That's just unbelievable. Now, we get into the next question, which talks about the alternative learning teacher. I call it the ALT just because I'm tired of saying alternative teacher licenses. I get, wait a minute, ATL? ATL, I call it. Huh, sorry, ALT, I must be thinking of BLTs, a little hungry. Alternative teacher licenses, as well as performance, pay for performance. Now, Mr. Dooher embraces the ideas, yet he sort of doesn't. Try to see if you can figure it out. Watch this.
Well, we've always been about good education policy, and we don't think it should be about politics. What we stand for is an annual review of our educators. I think most Minnesotans would be very surprised to know that some teachers go years without a review. It's not fair to the kids, it's not fair to the teachers. Teachers by nature want to know what they're doing because they're constantly assessing their kids. They want to have that. What we don't want it is based on a single high-stakes test. We want it based in research and best practice. On alternative licensure, we've clarified that, you know, if you're mid-career and you want to come in and teach journalism, you've got that degree, you pass the tests, and you prove and demonstrate that you know how to teach, that there should be an accelerated way to do it. So there's a responsible way to go about alternative licensing teaching, and there's an irresponsible way. We want to do it the responsible way.
What in the world? This is not about politics? Or did he say that? Wait, roll that back. Hold on. I want to hear Dooher say this is not about politics again. You got that cued? Roll that back up. Here's Tom Dooher again saying this is. I mean, like I said, he ought to have his own show on Comedy Central. Listen to Dooher say this one more time. Watch the tape.
Well, we've always been about good education policy, and we don't think it should be about politics.
Yeah, there it is. It's not about politics. If it's not about politics, why are you basically the union boss as a full-time paid lobbyist? But it's not about politics. Why are you endorsing candidates if it's not about politics? Why are you giving them money if it's not? I mean, how do you look yourself in the mirror, Mr. Dooher, and say this is not about politics? This is 100. You are nothing more than a slimy lobbyist for your union friends. That's all you are. The kids come somewhere after that. Don't tell me they come first. That's a joke. Absolute crap. Kids came first, we'd have vouchers, we'd have tuition tax credits, we'd have tax credits for homeschooling. If that's where kids can get a better education. That would be what we do. But no, it's about, for you, it's about protecting the system. That's what there's a responsible way and an irresponsible way. In other words, listen to what he said about alternative teacher licenses. Yeah, you favor it as long as you get to decide how it's implemented and who gets to be it. Oh, wow. Boy, that's reform-minded. You've always been in favor of pay for performance? Since when? Since when are the unions in favor of paying somebody for what they're worth, not paying everybody the same based on their stupid tenure? When? Since when? Since, maybe since Republicans won the election? Maybe since then? Now listen to what he says. The next question from Tom Hauser here is about the race to the top money that we didn't get last year, which of course is still our money. I have to explain that, of course, to people in office who think federal money is free, or I should say China's money. And here's what he said about why we did not qualify for the money. Of course, we didn't because we had no plan. The union wouldn't agree to anything. And of course, Obama and Arnie Duncan, our progressive-minded education secretary, basically put the unions as the arbiter as to whether you qualify or not. Here's what Tom Dooher said about our application. Watch this.
Well, we've been calling for teacher reviews. You know, Quality Counts says Minnesota does a poor job with that. So that's looking at the state and its support systems. Is it possible? It's possible, but we didn't need to look at that application. The application was poorly written. There were parts of it you couldn't even read. So really, we want to do what's good and right based on policy and research, not what's the newest thing at the Capitol.
And what is this? There were parts of the application you couldn't read. Oh, the words too big. It was poorly written. Well, I didn't hear any suggestions right there on why or what was the problem. Again, the problem was people had ideas that took the power away from the union. So Mr. Dooher there had to come up with some reasons and invent some if he had to. But that's just, I'll tell you, that's the best. I want this guy on TV all the time, except in his dumb commercials. Put this guy, interview this guy. You can't make it up. You can't make up how funny that was right there.